panda bears. Now, don't you think they're really cute looking? I know I do. Now, did you know in the Sea Cortez there's a panda bear of the sea? That's right, a panda bear of the sea. It's called a vaquita, and it's very close to being extinct. In fact, there's less than 20 of them in the world. That's right, less than 20. It's the most endangered marine mammal on Earth. And in today's episode, Dr. Lorenzo Rojas-Bracho, he joins me. He's one of the world's leading experts on the vaquita. Now, he's been studying these really cute marine mammals for decades. And here's a crazy tidbit. Since he's been studying them, their population has decreased 99%. Now, pause and think about that for a second. 99%. Now, the main reason for this is the use of gillnets, which, by the way, are illegal in Mexico. Here's the perfect storm. A fish called a tataba, roughly the same size as a vaquita, is caught with gillnets. Now, it's a huge demand in Asia because they have the swim bladder that can cost up to $100,000 for a kilo. Now, that's 2.2 pounds. And guess what? Guess who's selling them overseas? Yep, the Mexican and Chinese cartels. Now, that's just part of the storm. You also have fishermen. Their livelihood is based on fishing. And then, up until recently, not enough support from the government. So, the perfect storm. Now, today we talk all about these ocean pandas, their history. And by the way, they go back 3.5 million years, what's caused everything, and what we can do to save these really cute marine mammals. Now, I'm imagining this stuffed toy vaquita panda bear to give out to kids so they can learn all about them. And I'm sure once you hear all about them and you see how cute they are, you too are going to want one too. So get ready to hear an amazing story about a perfect storm, how we can weather that storm and bring some smooth sailing for your new favorite porpoise, the vaquita. And then let's all get together and bring awareness so we can be part of protecting these panda bears of the sea.
For real, 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 for real. Got a bunch of furry friends and I love them all the same. I'm an animal lover, veterinarian is the name. Let's share some pet stories from heartwarming to strange, losses and gains, from wacky to insane. For real. You're now tuned in to For Real with your host, Mark Kyle.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the For Real Podcast. Today, my guest is Dr. Lorenzo Rojas-Bracho, and this is going to be a good one, and there's a lot of reasons why it's important to me. Lorenzo, thank you so much for taking the time. I know how busy you are.
Well, Mark, thanks. My pleasure to be here and with your audience. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Well, you're in one of my favorite places in the world, so that's one of the things. I just wish I was with you in person doing this thing, to be really honest.
Yeah,
I know we're going to talk about the vaquitas, but I'm going to talk about you first and talk about how you got to be what you're doing now. Let's talk about you growing up and how you end up going in this journey and with with these porpoises and going from there.
Well, since I was, when I was, just to give you an idea, I think I was like 8 years old and I went to SeaWorld and I really got fascinated, especially with killer whales. And so I went to the main office at SeaWorld and asked for a job. Of course, I didn't get it, so 8 years old, but this thing is funny. Years later, I met the same trainer for the killer whales in San Diego. He was in Mexico. And there was a group of investors and they opened a dolphinarium in Mexico. So I started as a trainer. Well, I was being trained to be a trainer, but then I didn't like the captivity thing.
Sure.
I mean, I enjoyed the work there and being in contact with the animals and good friends there. And so I went back to school and study biology at the National University of Mexico. And then continue working in different projects on marine mammals like fin whales in the Gulf of California and dolphins in the Pacific coast of Mexico. And then I went for my PhD, and I was very fortunate to did my field work and my lab work on genetics of vaquita. And it was, I moved to vaquita. My program originally was genetics of humpback whales, and I was interested in large whales and large populations and how you could divide the population in different stocks. And Andy Deason, who was my professor at that time, he told me, Lorenzo, no, the project you submitted for your PhD, it's exactly the same as one that has just been accepted, but in Mexico City, at the National University. And it was a friend of mine, and so by coincidence, we submitted something very similar, of course. And so I had just presented a term paper on vaquita for my PhD, which was published later. And so Andy told me, why don't you move to vaquita? I know you wanted large populations and large whales, so go to the smallest animal in the smallest population. And that would be more interesting probably for you and for Mexico then. And for my good luck, then Bob Brownell, who became the head of protected resources at the Southwest Fishery Science Center, and he was probably the person who had published more about vaquita at that time. And so it was perfect for me to be at the lab when Bob came as head of the division. And he was so supportive that we started working immediately on vaquita. And during those times, I was in San Diego part of the time and part of the time in Mexico City, in Ensenada. So I came to Ensenada, and one of the professors at the university here told me something like, Lorenzo, it's a shame that nobody's doing anything on vaquita in Mexico. So you have Bob Brownell and you have these other guys, but no, who's doing anything for vaquita in Mexico? And I told him, well, I just going to do my PhD on vaquita. And then I realized, Jesus, this is an important thing. Which I knew was important. I was been with marine mammals for some time. And at the same time, my thought was Mexico has been a very successful country protecting marine mammals. Gray whales recover really because Mexico created the first sanctuary for large whales worldwide.
I've been down there.
And then we had protected elephant seals and four seals. So, it was the Guadalupe four seal, which is really not a seal. It's a pinniped, but it's like a sea lion. And so all those things went into my head together with that paper that I had, term paper. And so I jumped into doing risk factors affecting the vaquita. And when I finished my PhD and presented my dissertation, one of my professors said, Lorenzo, you don't want to become Mr. Vaquita. Finish vaquita, move and do something else.
Well,
you're walking on very thin ice with vaquita. And of course, I didn't follow his advice. Probably I should have. But anyway, so now I've been working with vaquita for 30-something years. And before we started the program, Barb Taylor was one of the young researchers at that time. And she got really interested in vaquita. She got published a paper of how difficult it is to estimate population size of small populations like vaquita. And then since then, we've been working together, and finally then I was offered a job in Mexico City, which I didn't take, but I was able to negotiate to stay in Ensenada, my hometown, and work from here to coordinate the National Marine Mammal Program for the Mexican government. And
let me interrupt a little bit. For everybody that's listening that doesn't know about vaquitas, let's tell everybody what they are, who they are, and let's get back to it. I want to interrupt you so I know, because obviously I've spent a lot of time looking at them, especially lately. So can you tell everybody that's listening a little bit about them, please?
Sure, that's a good point. I started probably there. Yeah, well, vaquita is the smallest cetacean in the world. It's about 1.5 meters average. Males are a bit smaller than females, with all porpoises, so this is a true porpoise. And it's endemic of the upper Gulf of California. So probably is the porpoise with the smallest distribution area in the world. And the main characteristic is the black patches around the eyes and the lips. So
they look like they're smiling.
It's always smiling. It's like the panda of the sea.
Right.
And it's the most critically endangered marine mammal worldwide because it's being killed in gillnets, incidental mortality in gillnets, which are these fishing gear that most fishermen in the world use, are also the most the risk factors that affect most marine mammals worldwide. So it's not an exception.
Yeah, and for everybody, I'm going to interrupt a little bit. So for everybody who's listening, a gillnet, and I've had some experience with that up in Alaska, is basically the way they catch the marine life is that they can't see them, and they swim into this net, and it catches their gills, and they're stuck there, and they end up dying. And it's not just for one species; it ends up affecting many. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's an important issue. And the main problem for vaquita are all gillnets. But in relatively recently, for the last 10 or 15 years, there's a fish called totuaba, which is also endemic from the Gulf of California. And that it's about the same size as a vaquita, about 1.5 to 2 meters. And the mesh size of the gillnet to catch totuaba is about the same size of a vaquita head. So they get badly entangled. So despite they are killed in all gillnets, this is the deadliest. And in the last 2 decades, there has been a demand for totuaba swim bladder, which is the organ that allows fish to float. It's like a little balloon. And that's very well appreciated in China, traditional medicine. And it helps with depression, with, I think there's 90 type of diseases that supposedly to help with. And it has turned to be a commodity. And Chinese are willing to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for totuaba swim bladder. For example, I know the highest price I've seen from my research of a very good NGO, this Environmental Investigation Agency, was $100,000 for a kilogram of.
So 2.2 pounds for $100,000. Wow, that's more than cocaine.
That's more than cocaine, than gold, than probably any drug you can imagine. So it's been called the cocaine of the sea by some friends of ours, and it's used in the media too. So vaquita population was declining when I started working with vaquita.
And what year was that, roughly?
The first survey we did was in 1997. So
almost 30 years ago.
Almost 30 years ago, and when I started working, we didn't know exactly what the population size was. So that was part of my job. So we estimated the population size less than 600 in our first survey in 1997. And then the population was declining 8% from 1997 to 2008. And then between 2011 and 2015, it declined about 34%. And I remember we had a meeting in La Jolla, and we invited the top statisticians working with marine mammals from the UK, from other places in the US and Mexico. And as we were doing the estimates, when it came 34%, I thought, Jesus Christ, this is a nightmare. This is because of the totuaba gillnets. And I got in panic. I mean, it took me time to recover. And I remember one of the UK friends that was in the workshop, he was calling me, and I didn't pay attention. I was just like, Jesus, 34%. And then it got even worse after that. Till 2018, it was like 47% decline. But if you add all these, in the last 12 years, the population has declined about 99%. And probably that's the...
99%.
We lost our population. That's probably the fastest and most steep decline of probably any mammal population, or probably not only mammals. So that was a shock, and we haven't lost faith, but we are still doing what we have to do to the good thing is, despite the population's small size, we have been able to. So let me go backwards. So we did a genetic study because, it said that small population size are doomed to extinction. So we did a genetic analysis. And we always we make teams, international expert teams. So we work the genetics with US and UK and Mexico. And we estimated that the population could recover even despite the small population size.
Right.
We could have the vaquita recovers. So as long as the population doesn't decline, is not lower than 10 individuals, then we will be able to recover the population. So,
well, how many do you think there are right now? And I want to talk about, because this is an interesting thing. One of the things that I read. First of all, I didn't realize, and I think I was watching Barbara Taylor in that documentary. They've been around for 3.5 million years.
Yeah.
According to, I think that may be, which is crazy because most people have never even heard of them. And it's a porpoise cetaceans, dolphins and all that kind of stuff, but they're a porpoise. But I know that how many are there? And let's talk about how they're different than other porpoises, because they're really elusive versus typically dolphins want to play in the waves and do all these things. And these guys don't do that.
Yeah, well, that's the estimate we did, and that's one of the advantages of vaquita probably was that they found it. So they come from a population probably from South America, probably the Phocenas pinipines, and when they got into the Gulf, then they evolved to be vaquita. And so their genetic constitution, what it did, the process is they got any deleterious alleles were left away from the genetic constitution of vaquita. So that's because they're even having this being the smallest of the cetaceans with the smallest genetic variability doesn't affect it because they got rid of these deleterious alleles through time. So the whatever genetic variability they had when they came to the Gulf, so that's 100,000 years ago, it's the same they have now. So they didn't lose anything. And so in a way they are protected. And we have seen that happen in other species now. But when we started, the first paper I wrote, with Barb actually, and we concluded that, some of the guys reviewing the paper kept asking. It took us a lot of modeling and a lot of time to have the paper accepted, but now we have seen that in other species. And then thanks to very young researchers from Mexico and the US that were doing their degrees in UCLA, we also wrote a paper in Science, which is probably one of the main two scientific papers, where we show that the population could recover. It will take long. But as long as you have 10 animals, then we're in good shape. So we cannot do population estimates for several reasons. One of them is that to do the population size estimate, we need acoustic data that tell us what the population decline is. So if you know with what population size you started and with which was the last population size we estimate, we know the decline, we can come with a population size estimate, but we can not do that because the illegal fishers, and I have to say that the trafficking of the Totuaba swim bladder is controlled by drug lords or crime syndicates from Mexico and China. And so that makes it difficult and complicated to work in that area. But they stole our acoustic equipment.
We need to talk about that because the reason you have that, and I want you to get into that because they're so hard to see personally. To actually see one in person, you have to do it by sound. So let's talk about that and how people are. This is how you measure them by their unique sound. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So we do two things. We do visual surveys, and we complement those with acoustic surveys. We started doing visual surveys because there were no acoustic surveys when we started working with vaquita, or there was not the proper acoustic equipment or gear to be able to estimate vaquita. So vaquitas emit sounds that are unique for vaquita. and we have these recorders that we can put in the water and leave them there for several days, and we detect those clicks. So with those special clicks that one of the good things of doing that with vaquitas, there are another porpoise species. There are dolphin species, but true porpoises, vaquita is the only one. So there is no chance to confuse vaquita clicks with any other.
One from the other.
And so what we do is we cannot estimate individually how many vaquitas are using acoustics, but we can estimate the trend. So if you think, for example, if you have a room full of people and you ask them to clap and you measure the noise that it's being made by the clapping of the people, and then you tell half of the people should go out of the studio and we continue recording, and you see the decline in the acoustic signal of the people clapping, and say, okay, now let's leave a third of the people here, and then you measure, you can come with an estimate of how much has the population declined in trend. So you had
the percentage.
This number of, let's say, of acoustic detections, and then you have this number of acoustic detections, so your trend was -8% or -34% or whatever. And then combined with the acoustic surveys, we can come with a population size estimate. Now, we've lost over 100 acoustic detectors through the years, and they're expensive. They're not easy to buy them. And another issue interesting, we did a survey. We tested all the acoustic equipment that was at that time in 2008 in the market. So we tested from Japan, from the UK and the US. And we did a survey and tested all. And one from the UK, from Nick Treganza, was the winner. So that's the one we've been using, and it's being used worldwide. So with that, even though Nick, and this is interesting, Nick provides us sometimes at the minimum cost the C pods or D pods. So we started with C pods, D pods, and he's going F pods now. But anyway, so we can use those, and we just did a survey recently for the first time since 2015 that we cover the whole refuge area for the vaquita. And we use acoustic and visual survey. So what we'll be working in the next months, hopefully by February, we have our first population size estimates in 2015. So that's how we study vaquitas, or at least the population side of the science of vaquita. It's a very difficult animal to study, as you were saying. That they are very shy. They avoid noise or underwater noise. And shy is not the best word, but to give an idea.
Elusive.
That
they're elusive.
Yeah, they're very elusive animals. So it's really hard to work with them. We know very little from the behavior of vaquita, but at least we've been able to have a very good picture of the population biology of the vaquita. They produce a calf every year, but we thought they only produce a calf every 2 years.
They only have one calf per one, right?
Yeah, and they have one calf per female. But we did an interesting project, we can talk more about it, which was Vaquita CPR, where we tried to catch vaquitas and bring them to a safe haven away from gillnets, because it was clear we were not succeeding in getting rid of them.
And on that program, you were the person that led that program, right?
Yeah, me and Cynthia Smith, we were both coordinating the program, which was a huge program. We had about 100 people from 9 different countries.
I saw that, man. I saw that in a thing. So just for you guys listening, what we're talking about is, because and we're going to get into the cartels and that stuff too, it was a program where you guys isolated them to try to have them in a controlled environment so they couldn't be killed, so you could grow the species or increase the numbers. And let's get into how we thought it would work and ended up not working, and there's a lot of reasons why. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, it was a complicated. So by 2017, so we have the International Committee for the Recovery of Vaquita. And this is constituted by world experts in cetacean conservation.
all over the world. People, all kinds of people came in. I thought it was really cool that you guys were able to gather so many people to work on that.
Yeah, and I mean, that was amazing. So in CIRVA, which is the name of this international recovery team, we were discussing the most recent data. So we knew that illegal fishing continued. So gillnets being used, totuaba was being fished, and that was the deadliest gillnet for vaquitas, together with a few others. But I mean, that was the top one. And then we had a program that we started to remove all derelict fishing gear. So that's the fishing gear that it's not under the control of fishers, and that continues killing animals. So we created this program together with the Mexican Navy and the Army, Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, World Wildlife Fund. So we did a big program with NGOs and government agencies and fishermen organizations from the Upper Gulf. And that was one of my favorite programs because it showed when you work jointly and joint efforts with people that might be very different, like an NGO and the government, but you put everybody to work on one thing. It was very successful, and we were able to remove tons of gillnets. But during this period, what we discovered is that most of the gear we removed was not ghost fishing gear or derelict fishing gear. There were active totuaba gillnets, and some of the gillnets that were removed by Sea Shepherd and Museo de la Ballena, which was a Museum of the Whale in La Paz. A couple of times we thought, I think I can remember exactly the number, but 40 sea lions entangled, and we found large whales entangled in these totuaba gillnets, bright whales.
Sea turtles.
And turtles and sharks, I mean, you name it. And then so I was like, Jesus, we're not going to succeed with vaquita if we just continue trying to get to remove gillnets or eliminate gillnets from the water. Because to eliminate gillnets of the waters, you have to give the fishermen an alternative. I mean, you cannot drive vaquita, you cannot protect vaquita and drive fishermen to extinction. So you have to come with alternative fishing gear.
Right.
And the main problem for us through the years, but this has been changing fortunately this last year, fisheries authorities didn't do their job. They didn't care about vaquita future, and even the United Nations said that fisheries authorities were absent from vaquita conservation plans. And a friend in Ireland says that the worst enemy for vaquita were not the totuaba fishermen, but the fishing authorities in Mexico. And they were supposed to come with alternative fishing gear. They haven't done anything. I mean, as we speak now, there's no alternative fishing gear. So it was clear for us that gillnets would be in the water for a long time. So we had big discussions. It was, I think, we come with consensus recommendations in CIRVA. And this time it took us several meetings until we agreed that it was a risk, of course, to try to catch vaquitas because we had no time there's a learning curve if you want to do these type of things. You have to learn how the animals behave. We didn't have behavior data. We didn't understand how, when they approach gillnets, what they do. We had very little. But it was clear to all CIRVA members at the end, if we don't do something, vaquita will go extinct. So we have to separate vaquitas from gillnets, and the only way is to close a bay. And we visited several areas in the Upper Gulf, so we decided where to put the vaquitas in semi-captivity. And then one key discussion to me was with Oli Ryder, who's the head in the Santiago Zoo of the Conservation Institute. And he has been doing this for years with rhinos and Przewalski horse and doing the genetics of these animals and then try to keep them in captivity or semi-captivity. And I called him because he was in my PhD committee and say, Oli, we have this issue. We will not have time for a learning curve, and we know very little about really vaquita behavior, and it might not work. And he said, Lorenzo, if you had started that program when you had 600 animals,
right, that's what I was going to say,
then you would have this learning curve. But you didn't do it because politically and how things were, that would have not been accepted, which was completely true. Those were very wise words. So go ahead, because if you do it, at least you know you tried to save vaquita with all the conservation tools you have in your toolbox. And if you don't do it, you will regret it the rest of your life.
Right.
So they said, any animal that you capture and bring it to captivity or semi-captivity, you will lose animals. I mean, that's...
Right. Well, the problem is, I don't know what the number was when you guys were doing it. Let's just say it was 20. You take 2, that's 10% of the population. You're doing, if something happens to them, which more than likely it will end up happening, you've lost 10% of the population. So when you're down to such a small number, it's scary.
Oh, it was scary. And we knew that was... So for sure we knew if we leave them in the water, the population is going to continue declining.
Right.
So at least let's try. And at that time we had probably 60 animals or something. So, but anyway, you're right. Losing 2 animals or 1 animal was a big thing. And so
right.
That's why we were able to have these tremendous number of experts in porpoise biology, conservation actions. We had people from dolphinariums in Hong Kong and in the US who advised us and had experience. And we talked to the government and told them, well, there's a risk here. If you want to take it, this is our option. And at the end, everybody agreed. And we discussed this in the International Whaling Commission and other places. And everybody knew, I mean, this is a risky thing, but better to try it. And so we had this international group of experts. So we have a group led by Barb Taylor on acoustic surveys. And then Armando, my colleague that passed away a year ago, was in charge of the acoustics. And so we developed this methodology where using acoustic and visual surveys, we could tell the catch team where the vaquitas were. It was the first it was done that way worldwide, I think. And so we were able to guide the teams that would catch vaquita. And that team was led by Randy Wells in Florida. And then we had the expert group to catch animals were a group of Danish experts that they've been catching harbor porpoises in European waters for research purposes, and actually a fantastic group of people. Everybody was there. And so we were successful at catching vaquita with special nets. So these are hollow nets that are float in the water. So if vaquitas bite caught, they don't get drowned immediately. You have the chance to cut the net. And so the first one we captured was a small calf, and probably was like around a teenager, a bit younger than a teenager. So we catch it and we brought it to our facilities, and it was very stressed. And so the vets decided it was better to release the animal. So we took some tissue samples from these animals, and we had photographs of the mother, and we released it. And as far as we know, it survived. And then we tried again, and then it was completely the opposite. It was an old female that probably hadn't had calves in the last 2 years or 3 years, so probably was at the end of the reproductive cycle. But that was like the opportunity because it was very calm. So when we caught it, I remember the Danish saying by the radio, "This is a perfect animal. It doesn't look stressed." They brought it to the boat where I was, and we were able to see how easy it was behaving. We brought it to the area where we had some special kind of pools that we could put the animal in there and work with the animal to get used to semi-captivity. So the idea was first to put him in a smaller pool and show him how to feed with the fish we had at that point. And everything was going well. It seemed calm. He started very nervous, but then he was swimming nicely. And one of the guys from the aquariums, Jay Sweeney, I remember saying, "Oh, you're a beautiful lady. You are doing well. She's calm. We're going okay." Now, the worst part of that is that I called the Secretary of Environment, and told him we have a female, it's working fine, it's perfectly. And then I started hearing people shouting, and so I told the minister, who told me it's my best birthday present.
Oh.
And then I hung up, and then the whole thing changed. The animal got very stressed, and we lost the animal, which I mean, it still hurts talking about it, because we knew with that we couldn't continue with the program, and again we would be facing gillnets and organized crime and all those things. So anyway, but we were able to get lots of tissues and brought them to Oli Ryder's lab for tissue culture. So now we have a good amount of tissue culture and DNA, fresh DNA, that we use to do our paper in genetics that show that vaquita is not doomed to extinction because their genetic constitution. So that was a very good thing, because many people were saying vaquita is doomed to extinction. There are very few animals left, that she's condemned. We'll never recover vaquita. But when that paper changed the whole thing, and it brought new interest in many groups to continue working for vaquita. And to me, it's important to continue working, because what we're seeing with vaquita, that's happening in other places. And we know that Chinese are looking for swim bladders of animals similar to Totuaba. And if it's not a marine mammal, it's going to be sharks, or it's going to be other fauna that is going to be boycotting those. So we have to work jointly with all the world to prevent this. And the market for international swim bladders is not only, it was China and Hong Kong, well, continental China, Hong Kong, and now we know they are in Vietnam, in Thailand, and other places. So this is an international issue that we all have to work together. And you don't want to give up and say, there's organized crime here, fisheries authorities are not doing their job, I give up. No, you have to show that you can continue doing that and set that as an example for other places in the world.
Right.
Because if we all give up when things get complicated, then the world is going to look like Walmart parking lot.
Well, the other thing is that you have to educate people.
For real, 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 for real.
And we'll be right back. This one's for all you cat owners out there. Now, most of my life, my family's had cats at one time or another. Now, for me, the only negative thing about cats, well, it was that stinky litter box. But guess what? BoxyCat has solved that problem. Now, just think. No more stinky litter boxes. But let's talk about that. BoxyPro, pro as in probiotics. Boxy's probiotics actually stop the bacteria that causes odors, and that means infinite days of having an odor-free litter box. You still got a scoop, but again, none of those stinky odors. Now, my son and his family, they use Boxy for their cat Donut, and let me tell you, nobody's holding their nose in their house. So if you want to stop holding your noses, get Boxy at BOXIECAT.com, and you can get a 30% discount if you use the code BoxyCat.com/for real. That's BOXIECAT.com/for real. And let's get some fresh air back in your house.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at PrepVet.com. Save 10% with promo code FurRealPodcast, covered by most pet insurance.
So I kind of want to set the stage here. So first off, when you talk about the Chinese and their medicinal reasons they're getting this bladder, it's been debunked. It's not that it doesn't do anything, apparently. Maybe, and the other reason they get it, it's a status symbol, because I've spent $20,000 for my Totuaba swim bladder, and I'm going to have less depression or whatever, which it doesn't work. but they think it does. It's a cultural thing too. So you've got that, and if you've got other species that are doing the same thing, what you're doing is you're educating people, one, that doesn't work. Two is this is how we fix it. And the other thing I think that's important for people that are listening, so what we're saying is you're in kind of a unique situation. You're in the Gulf of California, which I call Sierra Cortez, but and so if you think of Baja, between Baja and mainland Mexico, it's that water area there in the very northern part of it. And so what you're dealing with now is not only fishermen are trying to survive, you've got the cartels that are hiring fishermen to use gill nets to catch these guys because of money. And then you've got you guys trying, and you've got these poor fish. So you're all stuck in the cartel. Getting back to the way you locate them through the sound devices, the cartel is stealing those. By the way, so everybody's listening, gill nets are illegal, so they're not supposed to be there. And so you've got Sea Shepherd and all these other people trying to get rid of them. But it's not only the vaquitas we're talking about. It's all these other species are getting caught by these gill nets too. But the problem is for people that don't have their economics is based on fishing. Is trying to find another way for them to make a living too. So you've got this whole weird mix of things. It's like the perfect storm in some ways.
It's a perfect storm in a way, but fishermen are fishermen. I mean,
right.
I read years ago actually a paper while I was teaching at the university in South Mexico, that it's easier to have, and this is weird, to have a farmer move to the ocean and teach him how to fish,
right,
than having a fisherman moving inland to work as a farmer.
Right.
So they are fishermen. They want to do is fish. And the fisheries authorities in the last 20, 30 years have done their job of developing alternative fishing gear, but working with fishermen, you have to work with the communities. You cannot impose any type of alternative gear. That has to be a joint work with and that's the key part.
Right.
I mean, there's a social dimension you have to consider in any conservation program if you want that to succeed. But the fisheries authorities didn't do that. They tried to impose at some point some type of gear that didn't work.
By the way, we're talking generations. If you're a fisherman out there, more than likely you've got multiple generations. You grew up as a fisherman as a kid.
Yeah.
So you know one way, and then coming in and say, no, you got to do it this way after all these generations. It's you got to massage the situation, and it doesn't sound like it's. What's the current government doing now to fix this thing? Are they doing anything?
Yeah, well, one of the reasons I'm back advising the government to Vaquita is because I left government in 2022 because it was getting very complicated. The past administration was a fraud completely. Every environmental issue you can imagine. I mean, they do a lousy job. And they didn't care about Vaquita. They pretended they cared about Vaquita. I mean, there was one good thing that was done during that administration, and we can talk about it. But anyway, they were not interested in Vaquita. They just pretended they were doing stuff. And they were able to lie internationally, go to international, like CITES, which is international convention, and deals with trade of endangered species. And that's a key part. If you want to, conservation is affected by trade in many places. So you have to have an international body that can regulate and has teeth if you are not protecting the animals properly and you want to have trade with those animals. That's the reason there's trafficking of totuaba, like with drugs. It's illegal, so you have all. I mean, trafficking totuaba is just like trafficking with drugs and drug cartels and all.
Sure. Well, it basically is kind of a drug now.
Yeah, and it's the same groups that are doing that, and there's so much money involved there, and that money can go to armed trafficking, or the money from totuaba can go to fentanyl or whatever.
Right, they get some money now. They can buy the drugs that they're doing. But if you think about it, the bladder is being used technically as a drug because of depression and that, or whatever, status symbol, and that's kind of like a different drug. It's an illegal trade. And then it's given, we're giving these cartels, whether it be Chinese or Mexican or whatever, more money to purchase the other things that they're doing. And you're right, arms, drugs, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And so I didn't see the government doing anything, and I left. But sorry, going back to your question. So the new government came, and they called me. I mean, even before they were in office, and they said, Lorenzo, we want to do something for Vaquita, and I gave them, this is the things we have to work. We really have to work on alternative fishing gear, and to do that, there are several steps you have to do, because first you have to reactivate the international recovery team, which is well respected internationally, and they have made recommendations through the decades to the government in Mexico. So you have to reactivate CIRVA, which they immediately did then. So we already had 3 meetings of the international recovery team, and then I told them, but you have to reinstate what CIRVA proposed years ago, who is the Expert Committee on Fisheries Technologies, and we call it ECOFT. And you have to support these Vaquita safe gear transition efforts, and you have established an area to be able to test alternative fishing gear where you have good fishing grounds, and probably you will have to expand some of the protected areas we have now. And to my surprise, they started working. So first day I started working with them, now that they were in office. So they took office on October 1st, I think, last year. And immediately they started working. We had meetings. They restated CIRVA, COFT. They asked me to go with them to this CITES meeting that was in Uzbekistan in December. And I see them very actively working. It's not easy. And I told them, this is not going to be easy in any way. As you said, there's a perfect storm here. And you have to deal with all those things. And of course, there's a chance that we fail. You have to keep that in mind. We hope not.
Well, when you're down to 12 of them or whatever the number is now, I mean, that's scary.
And they said, yes, we want to do it. I mean, they could have said, no, we don't do it. We stop here. But they said, no, we want to do it. We don't want to sign the defunction certificate of Vaquita. And so I've been working with them, and Barb Taylor is also there working with the visual surveys, she's one of the world experts on that. And all the members of CIRVA are there, and ECOFT, Fisheries Technology. We have guys, 2 fantastic women from Denmark and Sweden, which are really active in alternative fishing gear. And now we are discussing how to reconfigure the protected areas according to CIRVA recommendations. We're working on that. And the best news probably about this new government is that they changed the fishing authorities. So fishing authorities that were irresponsible with Vaquita and probably involved in some kind of corruption, they were fired. I mean, so we have new people that many come from academia or from private companies. They are new to the government. They have their own learning curve, but they want to do something. And I never had meetings really about alternative gear with the previous administrations. And this one we had already 3 or 4. And again, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy to find alternative gear. I mean, gillnets are ideal for fishing, and they don't need a lot of effort. Many of the alternative gear, you need also to have a learning curve how to use some small trawlers, and old fishermen can use them because they know the ocean well. But many of the young fishermen,
right,
they just care about fishing. They don't care about learning fishing techniques. Or so you have to educate these younger fishermen how to use this alternative gear. So to me, this is the best news we ever had in our history. And one of the things that started the past administration that I mentioned is we have the zero tolerance area, which is the area where we have most of the vaquitas. It's like
right.
So we have the zero tolerance area, which I converted. It's 87 square miles.
87 square miles. Okay.
So that's the area where we have most of the vaquitas, and there's no fishing there. And what I think was the probably the most important conservation action since I've been working for Vaquita for decades is that the Navy said we want to prevent fishermen from entering the zero tolerance area because we cannot control them. They were really desesperated.
Right.
And a fisherman saw a documentary film from Greenpeace, I think, where they deployed rocks in a protected area to prevent trawlers from getting in. So the Navy called us and we worked with them and said, well, you cannot throw rock here because it's not trolling what it's killing vaquita or gillnet. So you have to do something different. And the Navy said, we have these cube concrete blocks, one cubic meter, and we can put those. And said, no, Armando said, no, you need to put hooks. And so we had 3-meter iron hooks, 2 per each concrete block. And they were deployed. And that created a de facto sanctuary. So gill netting inside that area decreased about 99%. I mean, there's gill netting around, and that's what we have to deal now. There's all gill netting around. So we have to, but at least now we have a safe area that then it was extended, where we have vaquitas protected. And probably the reason we have vaquitas now is because of this measure.
Do you think the vaquitas are learning that they're finding? I know it's fairly new that you now have this real protective area, real being a relative term, but do you think they're realizing that this may be a safe area and I can stay in that area and I may be okay here versus going otherwise? Or do you think? I mean, it's early.
I mean, there's something in that area that they like to be there,
right?
And now that because that has always been an area where. We saw most of the vaquitas, or we detected most of the vaquitas. Now it's protected with these hooks. And the number of detections we have had inside this area has increased. So we know that the population is not declining at 47%, as we said before. It might be still declining, but they are there. And every survey we've done, we've seen calves, juveniles,
that's awesome,
and adults. And one important thing is when you see juveniles, that means that those calves we saw in previous surveys have survived the most difficult period of their lifetime, which is going from calves to juveniles.
Right.
So that is working, and we know they move outside that area because we detected vaquitas outside the zero tolerance area. Now we're working to redesign the polygons. And we detected vaquitas in the refuge, which is a larger area, and so those measures slowly are positive, and I think we are we cannot say we're recovering the animal, but at least we can say we're not declining again at that 47%.
Well, you're right. At least you're in the right direction now. You know, it's amazing to me. You know, when I was doing my homework on this thing. It's the one animal or species that can be completely divined why they're becoming extinct, because it's mainly the gill netters. I'm sure there's other things that are involved, but majority, and it's the one that you know that you can fix it. You actually know what the answers are, which is very unusual when you talk about most species and what's happened with decline, other than climate change or whatever some of the things are. Which is really cool, but also really sad at the same time.
Yeah, this is one of, again, I think you're very right. One of the cases that we know there's one risk factor affecting the species. There are other risk factors. Is vaquita. We know it's gillnets.
Right.
There is it's a clean area. There's no pollution. Food is abundant. Is one of the most productive areas at the same latitude. All the vaquitas we have recovered are healthy animals. They had full stomachs. They are eating what you expect vaquitas to eat. We know we have a list of all the different species they eat, and they keep. I mean, they're not exploiting something like looking at emergent resources or anything like that. So that's at the same time the sad thing. We knew what we had to do, and government after government didn't do. Every government did a little thing, so they wouldn't say that this is government is doing nothing. And that's the reason, probably because of that we have an embargo from the U.S. and products from the Upper Gulf. We're on the red list of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. There's an embargo. There's a system of comparability between the U.S. and other countries. And if you don't protect marine mammals the way they are done in the U.S., according to the Marine Mammal Protection, and you cannot export to the U.S., and all the products of the Upper Gulf are also going through that kind of embargo. So you have all these punishments there because we haven't done our job.
Well, the hard thing is there's a lot of jobs out there.
For real, 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 for real.
And we'll be right back.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at prepvet.com. Save 10% with promo code FurRealPodcast, covered by most pet insurance.
One of the things is I'm sitting there thinking, because these things are, if you guys are listening, if you go to social media and you look at this thing, you'll see how gorgeous these things are. They really need a good PR company to promote them where people really become aware of it, like some kind of toy company to make these really cool vaquitas. People every wants one, and they go, all your kids love them. You're going to be more aware and want to protect them more, too, at some level. They need somebody that's, obviously you're one of them, but somebody out in the world saying, hey, look at these cute things. We could make little stuffed animals and show everybody who a vaquita is and what's going on with them.
Yeah, that's a key point, because I think any conservation program to succeed, you need public opinion and supporting.
Yeah, you need an awareness. And that's what we're doing today at some level. But I'm just a little guppy in the pond compared to what the rest of the world could do.
Yeah, when we started, nobody really, just the experts in marine mammals and a few others knew about vaquita. And I remember the first interview I gave in the radio. It was a very well-known radio program in Mexico, and I gave that interview. And then I was in Mexico City, and I took a taxi, and the guy asked me, "Oh, you're Lorenzo? Are you the guy protecting the little rooster?"
There's the radio.
And I said, "Not the little rooster, vaquita." "Oh, yeah, vaquita." And then after that, even though if it's not widely well known, that has changed. Usually we have several pieces of vaquita articles in newspapers and interviews, and I think NGOs have done a fairly good job. But there's always room to improve, of course. That's
of course. I would bet you I'm always talking to different friends of mine that if there's different subjects I'm going to have on the show, and I would bet you if I talk to 10 people, 2 or 3 may have known what a vaquita is, and the rest of them didn't. But when I'm just by me talking to people and showing, look how cute these things are, there's multiple more people that know about it just from that, And then when they hear that there's only, let's just use the term, less than 20. There's less than 20 that are out there, and they can be saved, and we can get them back to a safe number, whatever that number is, if we can do that. And I think the other important thing is too, but along with the vaquitas, is educating people how bad gillnets are for all the marine species, especially there. And for you guys that are listening, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, if you look at Baja California, Baja Mexico, and you look at mainland, so think about the border of California and Arizona. At the very top is where these guys are. It's where the Colorado goes into the Sea of Cortez or Gulf of California. That's where they are, in a real small being 87 square miles that we know now, but small area. But they're just so pretty, and it's so sad.
Yeah, they're gorgeous animals, but also I always explain that I know many people in Mexico don't agree on fishers, and they say it's a Mexican species, and this is for Mexico to deal with. And I said, well, Mexico hasn't dealt properly with vaquita. And these type of animals, even if they are in one country, in the waters of one country, they belong to humankind. I mean, these are not animals from Mexicans.
They belong to the world.
They belong to the world, and the world has to know about it, and the world has to help with it. So that argument that it's Mexican to solve, it's a disaster.
I totally disagree. By the way, don't we call this a Gulf America now? Lately, that's what I'm hearing. So I guess it's Americans' job now at the end of the day. But, it's also our legacy, right? Our legacy is to protect what we got. We've got this species, whether they're sexy looking or not, is our job is to do what we can, because the main reason why we're so close to the extinction is because of the humans at the end of the day.
And in conservation actions, we don't manage the animals, we manage human activities, and that's what we have to do.
Right. That's true. 100%. Okay, so we're running out of time here because I know you've got stuff going on. What haven't we talked about? By the way, tell everybody how they can find you and find out more information about the vaquitas. And by the way, in the description, we're going to have all this information. But for anybody listening, anything that you can think of social media-wise, whatever, so somebody can dig in more. Obviously, you can Google or whatever vaquitas. But what can you point people to whatever they can that you may be able to offer them?
Yeah. So there is Viva Vaquita. And that's a webpage that has all the info, very wisely run by Tom.
Viva Vaquita, okay.
And also you have a list of papers we have published and many others through the years. All the Vaquita papers probably, I don't know if it's updated, but that's one of the sources. Then you have the National Marine Mammal Foundation, that it's also in San Diego. And we work with them to do the Vaquita CPR, that program to bring vaquita to safe haven away from gillnets. And they have Project Esperanza also, which is a project on developing alternative fishing gear and all those. And then I don't know if they have a web page, but they're I'm trying to translate. It's Pesca ABC, that means APC fishers, which are alternative fishermen from Baja, and they are working on alternative fishing gear, and that's the main thing we have to help with. And then I mean, those are three that you can go. And then there is the International Whaling Commission has also a section on the scientific committee on vaquita, and I can send you those later.
Yeah, and for everybody who's listening, you just go to the description. It'll be in the description. All these links are going to be there. We're recording now, but I'll have those all in the description. And I'm assuming Viva Vaquita probably has some social media. I'll have all that in the description as well, and we can figure that out too. But I would really recommend anybody, one, Viva Vaquita, but also do some research on them, because when you see them, you're going to fall in love with them. I told my brother look at it, and he goes, "It's like a panda." And I know that's exactly what they're called, panda to see. It was really cute, and so that's that. So anything else we can talk about? Because we've got the joke to do, which for you guys listening, he didn't know it was going to be a joke, and he doesn't realize that he's going to be tortured in this thing, but we're going to do that too.
Now, I think I can send you also videos, if you can show videos of vaquita.
Yeah, and I'll have that. Any videos you send me, I'll have for social media, and I'll also have links in the episode too. So let's do the joke now. So first off, for everybody listening, I know you're cringing. I do this all the time. What I always say to everybody is I personally would prefer not to have to tell the joke, because I know they're bad and everybody thinks I tell bad jokes. But if you've got kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, or if you want to be on the show, if you email me at mkyleforrealpodcast.com, I'll put you on, gladly put you on. So Lorenzo, here's my joke for the day. I've got to read this to you, and I know you're just going to have to grin and bear it. So here, and I made it specifically for today. What is a vaquita's favorite advice? Any idea? I know. So here it is. Swim quietly and move with a porpoise. I know it's bad.
It's good.
At least it was relative to what we're talking about. So, Lorenzo, first off, thank you so much for being on. I know you're busy. You're my new best friend. The next time in Ensenada, you and I are going to hang out together. And I do want to meet you in person. But really, really, it's really been my pleasure, and thank you.
No, Mark, it's my pleasure to be here, and I appreciate it. As we were saying, you need public opinion to succeed with conservation programs, and you are doing just that. So I really appreciate it, and you're most welcome to taste wines from Ensenada.
Oh yeah, I've been to Valle de Guadalupe. I know, I've been there. I love that place. Anyways, also for everybody else that's out there listening, as I always say, without you, I don't get good guests. We always need to grow, so please pass the word out. Especially look at this story here. Let more people know about it. Tell them about it so they can learn about it. As a matter of fact, have the kids look at it too, because that's important. And but keep following, listening, and doing all the things, because you guys are the one that makes this happen. But really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening. For real.
That concludes this episode of For Real with your host, Mark Kyle. For previous and future episodes of For Real, listen via all major podcast streaming sites.
I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.